Out today. The meeting is being recorded, as you heard, so make sure you accept that. So we are talking and sharing today about just an update on our demonstration classroom that we started last year for Universal Design for Learning. And actually, let me back up. We've been working on this classroom for multiple years via a CEF grant. And this year was the first year working without grant funding, but trying to look at how we continue to push and expand this work for our partner Bridges Public Charter School. So with that said, I will introduce different folks throughout the presentation as we go on. So you'll get to meet the classroom teachers who've been the master implementers of Universal Design for Learning in their classrooms. We have one of the school principals here with us. I'll hopefully be able to turn it over to her to share just a little bit about the school and the demographics of the school. And then we'll talk about Universal Design for Learning in general, and then how we implemented Universal Design for Learning at Bridges Public Charter School. To start, we always like to share a little bit about us. If you are unfamiliar, we are the DC Special Education Cooperative. We're a nonprofit that supports charter schools. And we were founded by charter leaders who really realized that, there were a lot of reasons not to reinvent the wheel and work together to strategize and implement processes, particularly on how we serve special education and serve special education students in the District of Columbia. Here we are 21 years later almost. And so we are up to 56 member LEAs that are serving 100 school campuses, serving at least 5,000 students with disabilities. So the demonstration classroom, really, we've really, our programs that we sort of run all of our work through. One is the Elevate program, and that is how we look at how we provide high quality services to students in the District of Columbia. Our DC3C program, which is our transition program, really working with transition planning for students with disabilities. And then we have school-based Medicaid, which is run by Monica Lesperance, and that allows our member schools to learn and participate in our school-based Medicaid billing so that schools can receive adequate funding to continue to serve our kids with disabilities. So those are our three programs, and our demonstration program runs through our Elevate bucket of work. So what is a demonstration classroom? It's essentially a professional development model. And what we really wanted leaders and teachers to be able to see is how they can see practices work in the classroom. Universal Design for Learning is one example where we hear about the principles, we know that there's a framework, but what does it actually look like in action? And so we really wanted to create spaces where school leaders, school people can come and see if a particular strategy was implemented in a classroom, what would it actually look like? So today we're talking about Universal Design for Learning. We've also developed this framework around evidence-based intervention programming and co-teaching. So if you are interested, we will have another session later next week about co-teaching and looking at how that is implemented in a classroom with one of our partner schools. So talking about Bridges Public Charter School, we just wanted to give a snapshot of who Bridges Public Charter School serves. So Kay, would you be able to or willing to share a little bit about Bridges and talk about the population that you guys serve?
Sure. So Bridges is a pre-K. Can you all hear me? I decided to sit outside, but I don't know if it's the noise of the waterfall is interfering with the sound. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. Um, it's a pre-K through 5 elementary school, and we service a number of our students that have IEPs. But currently, as we're looking at our demographics, it has shifted, and the majority of our students will be students who are English learners. There will be more than 50% of our population, which will definitely make how we instruct, and we'll be looking at how to meet the needs of those learners as well. It is a very culturally, ethnically diverse student body, and we are trying to make it as culturally and ethnically diverse in terms of our instructional staff as well. Does that help?
Yes, thank you so much for that. So absolutely. So you can definitely see in this chart that Bridges population is very unique. It is what we would consider a high needs population overall. And so, you know, really looking at how we serve kids to make sure we're, I would say, evening the playing field is really important for Bridges. And you'll really get to see how, you know, how important this is in this particular classroom that we serve when we get to look at the demographics of the particular classroom. So thank you, Kay. All right, so let's get to the nitty gritty about universal design for learning. So if apologies if there are people who already know this, I'm still gonna give a framework and some background here. So basically, universal design for learning is a framework that was designed by CAST, which is the Center for Applied Special Technology. And the idea really started with thinking about architecture. And I'm sure everyone has heard the idea of form follows function. And so the notion is that if you really understand the function, right, if you understand what you're trying to do, then you're going to build your process, you're going to build your work around creating that function and serving that function. And so universal design literally is an architectural concept. And Cass decided to bring that same thinking into classrooms. And so Cass really wanted to look at how do we create access to instruction for all types of learners. And the key thing about universal design for learning, I think if you can remember anything, is reducing barriers to learning. That is the main goal. That is everything you want to be doing, is reducing any barriers to learning along the way. And so in order to do that, you have to create flexible learning environments. And that is what the principles allow you to do. They are structured around 3 core principles: multiple means of engagement, multiple means of representation, and multiple means of action and expression. So moving along, what does this look like scientifically? So Cass really looked at the parts of the brain and the networks of the brain that need to be activated in order to achieve these principles and work through these principles. So when we're looking at engagement, we're looking at what they call the affective networks, and you can see they've highlighted that part of the brain in green. And this is where we activate for our students the why of learning. Multiple means of representation. You can see that part of the brain highlighted in purple. And this is where we look at how do we activate the what of learning? How do we activate and highlight and make sure our students are clear about what it is we want them to learn? And then finally, we look at action and expression. And we can see that part of the brain is highlighted in blue. And these are the strategic networks of the brain. And this is where, as educators, we have to look at how we activate the how of learning. What is the root? What are the things that we need to put in place to facilitate how our students learn? CAS really says that, you know, traditional curricula and the policies that support curricula are just too prescriptive. And so if you are a, you know, especially a new classroom teacher, and even some older classroom teachers, sometimes we're given a curriculum, we're given a pacing guide, and we just want to, you know, go right through that curriculum and pacing guide and do things as they're presented, and not necessarily really understanding how we can build in routes to success. Yes, we want our students to access that information, but we need to have some framework on how we can adjust and be flexible in order for all our kids to reach the destination. Traditional curriculum really is centered on the middle, right? It usually can just get to the kids in the middle. But as we know, especially, you know, in places like DC and the populations that we serve, that's absolutely not enough. And so we have to be able to make clear our goals of learning and provide the guided supports for our kids to reach those goals. And the understanding for us should be that diversity is the norm, right? And so when we're teaching in flexible environments, diversity is the norm. It is not the exception. It is not the extra thing that we do on top of. It should be how we function as classrooms and as schools and school divisions. So I want to share a little bit about some additional work that we added on this year. I really wanted to capture and develop a observation tool that could be implemented with fidelity. And so what we did is we worked with To Teach LLC, which is also the organization that created the co-teaching observation checklist. They are friends with Marilyn Friend. And as we know, Marilyn Friend is the considered the guru of co-teaching. And they worked with me to look at the UDL observation principles, or look at the UDL principles, and then utilize them to form an observation tool where when you go into a classroom, you could actively look for all of the components of each of the principles and then rate teacher participants on the undercurrents of each principle. So this is just a snapshot of examples. Multiple means of representation actually has, you know, 3 categories. Multiple means of action expression also has 3 categories, and so does multiple means for engagement. The goal when developing a demonstration classroom is to be able to implement with fidelity. So, because remember, what we want to do is build out additional classrooms. And so we need to be very clear on what the expectations are when we're observing, so that those expectations become concrete. It helps teachers understand what you are looking for so that they can use those when they're planning. And then it also helps to build out, because we're not changing and doing different things room by room. There are certain things that we're saying we're going to look for no matter what classroom we are going into. So now I'm going to give sort of a recap of last year's finale. I'm going to call it last year's finale. We really were hoping to have people come into this particular classroom at the end of last year. And as we know, COVID had different plans for us. And so we were able to do a virtual tour. So I want to recap some of the highlights from last year's tour. And then what we'll do is we actually did get some video of instruction from this particular classroom this year. And so we're going to see how they were able to adapt to a virtual environment and still use the UDL principles to inform their teaching practices. What was really exciting about last year is we were able to integrate assistive technology into this process. Think about how we could use assistive technology to leverage action and expression, leverage engagement, and leverage how we're representing information to students. And so we worked very closely with some assistive technology specialists, and we literally took parts and components of the classroom and designed it accordingly. So you can see in the action and expression area, Not only do these kiddos have computers there, they also have a little bucket with paper and pencils that they could use. And then also we added in flexible seating in order for them to even literally physically express themselves if needed, and have that means of, even scaling it to engagement in the classroom. It was really great because when we implemented different assistive technologies in the classroom, the students were taught how to use them. And so when they went to work in small groups, the students would actually, um, they were actually told, you can go get a bumpy seat cushion, you can go get a ball chair, whatever you would like. And the students knew exactly where to go, what to get, and how to use it. So that was really great for getting them to work and engaging them and staying focused. We saw lots of use of timers in the classroom. This was one type of timer. There was also digital timers that were used as well. And this was a tool to just keep students on track for what they needed to do, especially when they were working in small groups. And multiple means of representation. As you can see in the images here, everything from fraction bars to anchor charts, little vocabulary cards. There were so many different ways that students would get access to the same concepts. And this was very helpful to making sure that students were able to retrieve and receive the information that they were getting in the classroom. So just some clarity on the principles to get a little bit, just a little bit deeper. And I will say it is really important, if you have time, to go on the CAS website and look through Universal Design for Learning, because we can give you a snippet here, but it is so deep, so thorough. Under every principle, there are some core values and things that you really need to understand. So I definitely would advocate for doing some of that research. So multiple ways for students to express their learning and demonstrate mastery is very important. We as special educators know the value and importance of choice, but this really doesn't even have to be a special education thing. It should just be an education thing. And at all times, as much as possible, allowing students to show what they know through various means. Writing, speaking, peer interaction, and conversation is highly important. If you were able to go into this particular classroom last year, you would have seen a ton of peer interaction and conversation. The students were always having conversations about their work, which was very, very powerful. A lot of metacognition happening in that classroom. Drawing, modeling, even physical action. Again, various ways to express and demonstrate what they've learned and mastered. And we'll see some of that today as well. Multiple methods for engaging students. The engagement principle is, I think, a little difficult sometimes to navigate, because some of it is about action and expression as well. But the idea is that students have choice. They get varying levels of challenge. So the challenge can be adjusted along the route to learning. And you also end up with an environment, you're creating an environment that is free of distractions. So this is why I always like to put the images at the bottom here about GPS systems, because GPS systems often function in a way that allow you to zone in on the things that are important for you to get to your destination and minimize distractions for you so that you don't get lost. And if you start to veer off or get lost, what does the GPS system do? It catches you and reroutes you. And that's what we should be doing when we're engaging with our students. We're rerouting them throughout the process so that they don't end up somewhere where we don't want them to be. So here here's where I'm gonna bring in Mr. Packer. I'm sorry, Miss Packer and Mr. Woodland. And I would like for them to just share out about, so I gave sort of a snapshot of the things from last year, and this year was obviously very different. So in trying to, maintain the implementation of these principles in a very different environment, I just wanted them to share about like any challenges they faced, lessons they learned, things they want to keep moving on, etc. So I see Ms. Henderson Packer here already. So would you like to share a little bit?
Absolutely. I'm gonna pull my mask down a little bit due to the technical challenges we've been experiencing. But this year, in a nutshell, has been a challenge that we have stepped up to the plate and participated actively in. Probably one of my most difficult school years in teaching, and I've been doing this for a while. So some of the challenges that we faced as a team, probably the thing that we pride ourselves the most on in fourth grade is building relationships with our families, building relationships with our students. It's really, really difficult to do that virtually, in addition to maybe some cultural and language barriers. As Ms. Kay stated, our school has moved to almost 50% second language learners. So we have a lot of parents who speak English as their second language. And so connecting with families is something that we pride ourselves on. And so when we weren't able to do that, we had to find different ways of making those connections, and inviting parents into the classroom so that they can see what we're doing and how we're building relationships and how we're encouraging their students to take academic risk and buy-in and virtual. We had back to school night too, when we came back into the building for hybrid. So just trying to stay as creative and flexible as possible. Some of our families, it was really, really successful, but there were some families that we would have liked to have built a better relationship or a stronger relationship with, and it just wasn't possible. Student access to technology and to the curriculum. For some of our students, they were the navigators at home. And so having them log onto the classroom and Google Sites and access the technology and be in the right class at the right time and knowing the right links. And so that was a hurdle initially in the beginning of the school year. In addition to, Ms. Kay, don't say anything, unrealistic expectations from administrators. So the administrators see the big picture, and sometimes us teachers get caught up in the thick of it and the weeds and the everyday part of it. So sometimes that is miscommunication because we're seeing the day-to-day grind of it and administrators are looking at the end results, and sometimes that can be a clash, but it's a collaborative clash. And in the beginning of the school year, just making sure that we were all on the same page. And we were, because what we wanted from our students was to be successful. Our next challenge, virtual fatigue. Aren't we all tired of Zoom? Aren't we all just tired of Zoom? So for our students, it's, really long days in front of the computers, making sure they're taking movement breaks, making sure we're taking movement breaks, making sure we're taking care of ourselves overall. So yes, again, those personal connections, being too hard on ourselves. We like to do it right, and we want to do it right, and we want to be successful, and we want our students to be successful. So, giving ourselves some grace in this challenging, difficult time was something that we also had to learn. And student engagement, whew, that part right there is nothing worse than having to ask a student to do something and they turn their screen off on you. So the nonverbal was all right there. So yes, keeping students engaged at their level of engagement, their entry, where they could enter into the lesson, how they were able to engage into the lesson, making sure that we were making it multiple ways of engaging students, multiple ways of accessing, multiple ways of demonstrating that they know what they know. That probably was the most thinking out of the box and creativity part that we had to come up with as a team. But in all of those challenges, we learned a lot of great things. So we learned to become flexible. We learned a lot of new tools and learning platforms. I think overall, that's probably been the best part of this, the technology piece and getting up to speed and up to date with the great platforms that are out there and the things that you can use to make your lessons and classrooms exciting and engaging. It really, 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 it highlights UDL, really, honestly. It forces schools to become up to date and making sure that all staff and students had access to technology, and Bridges did an amazing job with that, making sure everyone had access from hot boxes to Wi-Fi to new laptops to training, teachers receiving stipends for Wi-Fi. The school really, really, really did a great job in making sure that everyone had up-to-date access. We've had some students that actually probably had their best school years virtually. They thrived in the virtual environment, right? Because they're comfortable, they're at home, they know the structure, they know the day, they know their adults that are in there. And so some of our students, more our behavioral challenging students, did really well virtually. Student access, creativity, again, thinking out of the box. Our entire school had a one-to-one technology access. So every student had technology. And it also created an opportunity to be creative with student schedules. So if you were a student and you performed better in the morning, just being creative and kind of throwing out the old way of thinking that the school day is that 8 to 4 or whatever the school time would be, and then doing what's best for students, individualizing learning for students, which is another aspect of UDL.
Thank you so much.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so very quickly, Mr. Woodland, did you want to say anything or did you want to add anything there?
I definitely want to start off by saying our kids did an amazing job this year. They really did, despite the unfortunate circumstances. And they adapted very quickly. Like Ms. Packer stated, we value relationships. We know that that's probably one of the biggest stepping stones to teaching, is creating that relationship, because once we have the relationship, then we can be engaged. The engagement piece is just pretty much tied hand in hand. So, once we build those relationships, we have the students engaged, then we can, they can take academic risk and so forth. But the kids did a phenomenal job this year. I have to do a better job myself with underestimating the kids, because I do that a lot. We get new students every year and just trying to figure out where their academic levels are. So that's why this UDL program is extremely helpful, because there are different academic levels and students can learn from each other. I think that's the best part from all of this. So I just want to focus on the kids and how much progress they've made just throughout this situation, and how much I've learned. And with technology, they know so much already. So throughout this, they've even taught me a lot. So just kind of giving them that autonomy to seem like as if they're the teacher when they're, teaching me something small as one of the tools towards technology. They love it. So the fact that at times we can work hand in hand, but now they did a phenomenal job this year. They should really be proud.
Thank you, Mr. Woodland. So just quickly, I'm sharing some of the building blocks that we established throughout this process. I'm not going to read it to you verbatim, but coaching and observation cycles, having assistive technology in the classroom, having that direct support from assistive technology specialists, which I already discussed. The big thing that was added to our infrastructure this year was the UDL observation checklist. That was new this year in terms of how we did the observations. And I think it was a very successful tool and very helpful in allowing teachers and even myself when observing to keep the principles at top of mind when observing. And finally, again, all of the materials that you would want to have in some of these classrooms. And there's more. I mean, the thing about UDL is you could just go more and more and more and more and add on, which hopefully we'll be able to do some add-ons next year. All right, so I know these two already spoke, but if you guys want to introduce yourselves in terms of, what you teach, and how long you've been teaching. You can see the two of them. The reason I said this is a very special classroom, check it out. 22 students, 9 students with IEPs, and 9 students who are ELLs. So this is definitely what you would consider a high needs classroom. However, when you see these students in action, they will blow your mind. I mean, some of the discussions that are had and the answers that they give just really wow me every time. So I can't wait for you guys to see some of that. But Mr. Woodland, you want to tell us, how long you've been teaching?
So I've been teaching for, I'm gonna just go ahead and give a ballpark, for 10 plus years. So I've been teaching for 10 plus years.
Claim it, claim it.
But yes, as you see, we have a variety of students, like we've already stated before, with IEP students, ELL, second language learners. And I think that's the best part, because we're getting kids from different cultures, different diversities. And when we have those conversations, a lot of them tie into their real world scenarios. Mm-hmm. So we're able to listen and to hear from their perspective on how they learn something or experience something. So I think it's always a great thing, the fact that our class is extremely diverse. So yeah, that's my 10
Packer. Thank you. Ms. Packer, how many years do you have in at this point?
Crystal ball. No, I've been teaching 18 years. 18,
do the math.
18 years. Shut up. 18 years. Ooh, 18 years.
And I would say you guys are also a great example of a strong co-teaching relationship, which has been super helpful in implementing universal design for learning. So
it's almost like the best of both worlds, because, for me, special education has been my love and passion. And math is not my favorite subject. So, for me, I learned so much from Mr. B and watching how he instructs the students. And then, just adding in that support from the special education side and framework of looking at everything, it really has been a great mesh. So now a lot of times the conversations that we have, they're not personal, it's like, what's best for the student? If this, I hold hands really, really a long time with the students, and he's like, no, Pat, let them go. Academic, let them struggle. Just let them figure it out. And probably our first coaching session with Megan was one of her conversations she had with us. And I'm like, but I don't want to fail, that whole conversation. But, that academic struggle is what they need. Because they were that first year that we started, they were so prompt dependent. I mean, like looking at me to tell them when to write their name on the paper. And it was because, I probably set up too many cushions in success. So the training that I received from UDL and then the training from, you know, someone who knows the content well, it's been an absolute gift for me in making me better in what I do and to move further in my professional career. So thank you, Megan, for allowing us to participate in this.
Absolutely. And I love what you said about the rigor, because UDL is about rigor for all kids. UDL allows you to create an environment that all kids can achieve highly, because of how you develop the root. And yes, Ms. Packer, when we first met, Ms. Packer wanted to hold hands and, you know, she wanted to just be next to them the whole way. But, you know, quickly figured out when you design the classroom with the supports in place, I mean, you can actually take your hands off and let kids really come to the learning as independently as possible. So excellent. All right, so I'm gonna share here, we're gonna start with some video. And so this first set is looking at multiple means of representation and how it was done in the virtual environment. So I'm gonna press play. And what we can do is just sort of when we finish a video, we can just talk a little bit about, you know, what we saw and how we're seeing the principles implemented.
Please read the objective for today.
Go
ahead. Go ahead, Aaliyah.
Students will solve multiplication problems by finding patterns and using a ratio table, error modes, and other strategies to prove my thinking.
Great, good job. So what do we need to know in order to be successful?
Khalid,
Go ahead, Khalid, tell me one thing.
we will solve multiplication problems.
Good, we're solving multiplication problems. Good, anything else, anyone?
And we will be finding patterns.
Finding patterns, good. Kingston, I love when you are paying attention and engaged, sir. You're so important to this classroom. Good, thank you, Kingston. Finding patterns, anything else, anyone?
By using all your different ratio tables.
Is everyone able to see the video? No, okay, I'm sorry.
Megan, we have sound, but no video. You might have to go directly to the.
Okay, I'm sorry about that. Does everyone see the video screen now? All right, hold on.
It worked in practice.
It did.
Mr. Woodland and Ms. Packer, is there anything you would say to set up the video that we're about to see? Anything about what's, oh, yeah, all right, here we are.
Got it.
Anything we should be thinking going into it?
All right, I'll play it and then we can, does everybody see it now? Okay, thank you.
Area models and other strategies.
Using our
Gonna start it again.
strategies.
Please read the objective for today.
Khalid,
Go ahead. Go ahead, Aaliyah.
Megan, you gotta unmute.
Great, good job. So what do we need to know in order to be successful?
Khalid,
Go ahead, Khalid, tell me one thing.
we will solve multiplication problems.
Good, we're solving multiplication problems. Good, anything else, anyone?
And we will be finding patterns.
Finding patterns, good. Kingston, I love when you are paying attention and engaged, sir. You're so important to this classroom. Good, thank you, Kingston. Finding patterns, anything else, anyone?
By using all our different ratio tables, area models, and other strategies. By using our 4 strategies.
Good, by using our strategies, ratio table, area model, and other strategies. I know you guys were kind of on the same page. Good, perfect. So now I have a problem. And my problem is my favorite markers come in packs of 10. Okay. Sorry.
It says 14.
I'm sorry, comes in packs of 14. Thank you, Kingston. Now I gotta pay attention better. How many markers are in 1 pack and also in 2 packs? Okay, so do we know how many comes in 1 pack already?
Yes.
Good, how many comes in 1 pack?
14.
14, good, so that kind of,
14.
so we got a lot of help already. So we have 14.
Are we counting by 14?
I don't know, you tell me. Jackson, are we counting by 14s?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, so then how could I find out how many is in a 2nd pack?
Khalid, you just count 14 plus 14.
Okay, so what did you use?
I used a repeated addition.
Good, 14 plus 14, good. And what would that give us?
28. 28.
28, we did 14, good, plus 14. Excellent. Is there anything else, Siham, I can do in order to find out 28? He did repeated addition with 14 plus 14.
You can do now do 28 plus 14 times 2.
Great job. 2 times 14. Excellent. Perfect.
So I actually paused that right there and just want to talk a little bit about, did everybody see how options were increased for comprehension? If anybody wanted to comment on that process and what they saw. And Monica, I don't know if you don't mind checking out the chat and see if there's anything in there. And you can just jump in, anybody. Well, that's actually a process that, oh, go ahead.
I was gonna type it in. I don't know if you wanted to type it.
Oh, no, you can talk. Go ahead and talk.
Oh, okay. Students were encouraged to provide multiple ways to solve the problem. So the first we talked about was kind of like the repeated addition and, are there other ways? So letting students know that there's another way that they might solve the problem and being open to that.
Okay, so the teachers were definitely open to different ways of the students coming to solve the problem. How did the teachers front load even just the concept of what was about to happen in the lesson?
The review of the strategy, the objective and, highlighting strategy. So kind of preparing and activating their prior knowledge and getting them prepared for what was to come. And activating it with this kind of, I call it like a do now teaser lesson.
Yeah, absolutely. There's always in this classroom, this is something you would always see in this classroom, before students embark on any type of work or any task, they really narrow down what the objectives are going to ask them to do. They're strong on the vocabulary that's going to be used. And so they know what they're getting into before they actually tackle what's ahead of them. And that's a safety mechanism, right? It gives them the courage to go deeper into what's to come. And Ms. Packer, can you share about another, there's a strategy that they've used this year that you cannot see, but you could share a little bit about how you guys actually separated the kids into small groups in order to do some background knowledge and front loading before they got turned over to Mr. Brandon to actually execute tasks.
Yes, ma'am. So what we do, we have, on that particular day, we have 2 groups. So the first group, we are doing almost like a mini lesson on what they're about to learn. So for those students, most of them have language processing, retrieval issues or delays. And so I will kind of like go over vocabulary, introduce words. I even show like videos, reviewing steps, whatever information that we know that we're going to ask them to produce in the actual lesson. I'm kind of front loading that information. So while Mr. B is teaching one group, I'm in a breakout group at the same time teaching, almost if we were doing like parallel co-teaching in the classroom, but it's with the breakout rooms. And then once our sessions are over, then we switch groups. So I will get that next group and they would do like the I do in that part. So they will be working independently with me. And then Mr. B will be teaching the mini lesson to the students that I have. And then on some days now we have our math interventionists. So we have 3 groups going on at the same time. So it's been really, really, really helpful, especially for those students who are our second language learners, our students with IEPs who have processing and retrieval difficulties.
Thank you for that. Yeah, and you could actually see it when Mr. B is doing the lessons with the students. They're pulling from the information and the scaffolding that they received in the small group with Ms. Packer. So another way to set them up to feel successful as they enter into the deeper work. All right, moving on.
10 plus 4 would equals 13, and then I did times 3.
Great job. Good. So my area model represents 14 times 3, because 10 plus 4 is 14, times our width, which is 3.
So there, at that point, we get to see, the students started out being shown by using the grid to solve these problems. Now they're getting a different perception of the same problem, but using a very specific, different type of tool that allows them to use unit blocks to create the same problem, just using a different method.
Represent our area. We're going to use our, all right, now I'm sorry, let me show you. Now this is my linear pieces, because when it's your turn, okay? I have my decimeter, which is 10, okay? This is for my width. Now I can either increase it or decrease it. As you can see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now, yes, these are centimeters, 6, 7, 8, and 9 using my centimeters. So I can adjust it either way for my width. Okay. Now, for my length or my width, I can adjust it the same way. Okay, from centimeters all the way to decimeters. Okay. And as you can see, it just goes right, it goes right on top. Okay, now let's fill in our area. Okay, what would this first area represent? What expression can I create for this first area?
10 times 3.
Good, and what's 10 times 3?
30.
30. So what area tiles could I use to represent this first area?
Strips.
Good, how many strips?
3.
Good. I need 3 strips. Look, you put it, it fits right in. Look. 1,
2,
2,
3.
and 3 strips. And that was represented by 3 times 10, which equals 30.
You can put that inside the.
Yep, I can put it right here. Now, what about my next area? What equation,
3.
expression I should say? Good, 4 times 3. What would I use? What area tiles?
Decimeters. Units. Units.
Good, units, perfect.
Units, and you put down 12 of them.
Good, great job, thank you. Good, Myson. Then I have 12 units representing for my next area.
You just count the units. 4 rows of.
Okay, so I have 4 times 3 representing this area, which equals 12. Am I finished?
Oh, you gotta add them together.
Am I adding?
30 plus 12.
Good, thank you, Alice. Good, 30 plus 12, which is what?
42.
Good, 42. Excellent.
42.
All right, so just pausing with that one, what I like about seeing this students experience all those options of perception is you see these little revelations along the way. You see all these recognitions about, what these tiles represent. You see recognitions about decimeters versus units. And I didn't know if the teachers had any other comments about that process with the kids.
It's a mixed group. Excuse me.
All right, but we'll come back to it. We'll go ahead and finish this last little bit and then we'll
Megan,
yes.
Megan, can you hear us? Oh, okay.
Mhm.
So I'm not sure if you're getting ready to show it or not, but students were able to, like you stated earlier, use a different type of strategy to solve this as well.
Mhm.
Because at the very beginning of the video, we were using the ratio table.
Mhm.
So then students were able to choose, they were able to have the autonomy to choose which strategy they feel more comfortable with. Because since we modeled using the ratio table, and then I was able to model using area model. So then students are allowed to choose, like I said, whatever method they feel more comfortable with in order to solve a problem.
Yep, and that is actually coming up next. So we're going to this little short snippet where we'll get to see, how the students took, that concept of the ratio table, and they took the concept of using these area models, and they start to maximize, transfer, and generalize the concept into one whole thing. So that's a good segue.
I was able to connect it, okay, my area model with my ratio table. You guys see that? I was able to connect my area model with my ratio
from earlier.
Exactly. I was able to connect my area model with my ratio table.
Excellent. So again, you see those moments, those ahas with the kids, at the end he says, oh, wait a minute, that's the same thing that was on the ratio table. And so that is the power of providing options for perception. That is the power of providing multiple means of representation, because kids will make little connections along the way that relate to them. And at the end, they were able to generalize the concept as one concept. And so that's an example of getting kids to the same place using multiple routes. So with that, I have stopped sharing my screen, and Going to go back to our presentation. Oops. I'm sorry. All right, I'm going to screen share again. And so now we're able to just look at, some of the elements here of multiple means of representation. We saw the clarifying of vocabulary and symbols in the beginning of the lesson. We actually saw some support for decoding mathematical notations and symbols because of the different options of the area model and the ratio table. We heard about how background knowledge was supplied for the students. We saw that the teacher at the very end highlighted the patterns, right? Actually, in the beginning, patterns were highlighted with the ratio table, and then the critical features and the big ideas were highlighted at the end. So we really then got to this maximization of the transfer of material. So moving along. So the next component that we get to see is multiple means of engagement. All right. And so this is actually a very short snippet, but it allows you to see how we're actually optimizing choice for the kids, because they're going to move into developing or doing some independent work.
That's like the challenge.
But you guys are capable of doing it. Now, couple things. All right. You can choose your strategy, either between ratio table
Or area model.
or area model. Okay, I'll allow you to choose your strategy. If you're choosing a ratio table, you're going to have to write it on a piece of paper. If you're choosing area model, okay, you're going to use this app right here.
I'll send the link in the chat for you.
Thank you. To create your visual. Okay.
And there we go.
Are there any questions? All right, please go ahead and put in the chat which strategy you are deciding to use.
Okay, so now the students have been given a choice about how to show their learning. That's pretty clear, straightforward, and simple. Did you all have any comments about that before we move into multiple means of engagement, Mr. Brandon, Mr. Woodland, or Ms. Packer?
No, ma'am.
It was pretty simple.
It's pretty simple. Now they have some options. All right. So we're going to go ahead and take a look at our next slide. All right. So this will be the last video clip. At the bottom here, you can see the different products that the kids came up with. And there will be one in the video that you can't see because there was a student who did some work on paper. But this is really going to take a look at how we can provide multiple means of action and expression. And I think this was difficult in the virtual learning environment, obviously, because, I think a lot of teachers felt like their options were limited in figuring out how to do this. But it's really exciting to see, particularly the one in the middle. You had one student who came up with a completely different way of using the area model software to express her learning. So oftentimes, even when we give the kids option, they may come up with a third or a fourth that you didn't even think of, but it's absolutely astounding and shows that they completely understood the concepts that were presented. So here we go. So right now, what you see, the students have been told to go on, you've got your choices.
Go ahead.
Now they're sharing products back with Mr. Woodland.
Okay. 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 Good. Good. Great job.
So can I go to the next one?
Do the next one, please. Yes.
All right, I'm finished with all of them, and the last one's going to be hard to see. So here's the first one.
Okay.
Here's
Okay.
the second one, and
Okay.
here's the third one.
Good, Alice. Good. 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 Now on that third one, did you do all the way from 1 to 15?
1 to 15, yeah.
Okay. Now I have a question for you. Where do you think you could have started?
I think I could have started from 5 actually, because that's the closest one that we already did that I know off the top of my head.
You don't think you could have started from anywhere else other than 5?
I mean, I could have started from 3 or 4 or 10 maybe.
I like that idea better. That last one, what did you just say?
10.
10, good. Remember, let's use those benchmarks, those multiples of 10, because then you could have just did 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Okay, all right. Now, last thing, can you please do area model using 15 times 14 and you're done?
Okay.
All right. And Rebecca's finished, then you can go ahead and share.
Mr. B.
Oh, nice. Good, nice. Good, Rebecca. Good, good. Oh, I like what you did there, Rebecca.
That's pretty smart, actually.
I like what you
Even
did
I
there.
didn't think that. I couldn't think about that.
Nice. Great job, Rebecca. All right, keep building. Go ahead. Go to 15. Great job. Great job. Go ahead, Khalid. Good. Okay, go ahead and do the last one. Good job.
Okay.
Good. Good job.
Awesome. So I think there are several things that we're allowed to see here. We see the support with executive functioning because some students are having to check in before they move on to the next. So Mr. B does a good job of not allowing students to get lost. Students, when they come with answers, he guides them into thinking better about how they might improve or get to a direction faster. And then we see the cool part where we have a student who went away and came back with something completely different. And the best part is because other students are involved in the conversation, I love hearing the other students say, whoa, that was really smart, right? So do you want to talk just a little bit about that at all, Mr. B, or just, that process and how
We have a lot of students, definitely one student in particular who just thinks outside of the box. And we really, really allow her to do her thing. And that's just the way she gets it. But at the same time, yeah, just like I always said, just giving the kids that autonomy to try to get from point A to point B. And like you said, there's different routes that students can take in order to get there.
Yes.
Yeah. And that's exactly what you installed in us at the very beginning of the UDL training. And we've implemented that from the beginning, and just having that additional year, this being our second year with this program, has really allowed us to take it a step further. And you can see it with the students' work. It's extremely evident.
Excellent. So just sort of a recap, and then we'll move on and close things out. But we saw varying methods for response here. We saw the optimizing of the tools. Even though the tool was showed, to the students to use one way, we had another student pick it up and sort of create a ratio table using that tool, which was very smart. We saw you supporting the planning and strategy development, right? You supported them and walked them through as they were working, made certain students tell you when they were done prior to moving on to the next, so you made sure they didn't get lost. All of that enhanced your capacity for progress monitoring and led to student success for every single kiddo who was in that classroom at that moment. So I'm stopping here. I know we have gone a little bit over, but I just wanted to see if there were any questions that needed to be asked. And if I have one of my co-op folks, Monica or Julie, if you see any questions in the chat, could you let me know?
I just wanted to thank you guys for this year, for all you've done for your students, for sharing your work with us. This was really impressive. And I loved the ways that you were able to keep the UDL going strong in your classroom, and what I know is probably your hardest year of teaching ever. Your energy was fantastic in those video clips. Like, it was just really fun to see you and the students engaging. So yeah, so just thank you. And I have one question that's maybe not so UDL, but I would love to just put it out there for you to consider. Ms. Henderson-Packer, you said that you had some students that really thrived this year, and specifically some students with some behavior challenges. And I'm wondering if you're, and you certainly don't have to say where you are with this, but if you've been thinking about, like, how are you gonna carry over some of that lessons? I know you talked about the technology, right? Like, that's pretty easy, right? When you come back in person, you can pull all these tools back in, all this technology, but you can't recreate their home environment. So like, how are you starting to plan to think about that? Like, what's your thinking? Just curious.
My thinking is, so yes, like, this is a conversation we have when we team meet, because like my goal, the way students kind of light up to Mr. B, and he's made connections with students who haven't made connections with any other teacher, right? And it matters. It matters that you have someone that looks like you, that represents where you come from. It absolutely matters. And to have a male teacher of color to a school that's primarily students of colors, it matters. And so both of us have had backgrounds prior coming to Bridges where we were working with students with behavioral challenges. Both of us worked at level 5 placement schools. And so relationships have always been like our golden star. So the challenge for us moving forward, and I know like the school is kind of looking at some different ways of doing things with the COVID loss, learning loss, and how we can get our students caught up. And so some of that is the possibility of maybe looping up with our students so we can continue those relationships. Looking at possibly having some different ways of engaging students other than face-to-face. I personally think that this has been an opportunity for schools to continue virtual learning, right? So, you know, special education, you also have your gifted, you have your students who hospital, home-based. So why not continue something that's been successful? And then for some of our students who may need an altered school day, you know, we've had conversations in the past where we've had students with challenges, and maybe they needed a half a day of school, maybe they needed a half a day of learning. Well, now we have technology, we're keeping it, everyone has one-to-one access. So let's think out of the box in terms of student planning. And, you know, I don't get on my administrator's nerves, but I'm the one to be like, question. So, you know, to put it out there in terms of how we can best provide instruction for our students. That one student that we were like, oh, we wanted to, we knew her before she came to fourth grade. So everyone knows, you know of students, you're like, oh my goodness, when they get to us, right? The best school year by far, the most successful, the most engaged, participates, types in the chat. You can't recreate that, right? You feel good about yourself, your self-confidence, your self-worth. And, you know, Mr. B is like, it has a nickname for every student. Every student has a nickname. And so, you know, it's a great, great opportunity for us to continue something that has the advantage of being just the out of the box way of thinking and incorporating UDL throughout the school building. So I've been thinking about it. I've been asking administration.
And to kind of give piggyback on that, just allowing the kids to have options. Our biggest thing, Ms. Packer and I, we don't let kids opt out. That's not an option for you to be able to opt out of class, out of school, out of learning. So giving them those choices and still continuing with this platform with technology, the use of technology. So we've even had discussions where we're like, hey, we can still continue the way that we construct homework. It could be paper-based and, you know, use of technology via email, whatever the case may be. So we don't just want to throw any of these ideas out the window. We want to continue to utilize those platforms and build on them and give those kids options so they cannot opt out at all.
Excellent. Well, thank you guys again. Always appreciate seeing your work and working with you guys. And just to wrap things up, you know, we are always looking to expand our work in this area. We are looking at expanding using a tool called Mindprint in the fall. We're going to work and talk about that over the summer. And, you know, hopefully that'll be an additional thing that we can share as a supportive tool to a universally designed classroom. So look out for that. We're always looking to work with additional schools. So we can be contacted at info@specialedcoop.org. And anyone who is interested in looking at our UDL supports and, you know, finding out what we have, we will make those resources available to folks who are interested. So we went over our time, but this was a very good discussion. Thank you everyone for attending, and Ms. Woodland, Mr. Woodland and Ms. Packer, we will be in touch as usual. And thanks everyone. Enjoy your day.
Thank you.